Yeah, privatization of water is an interesting issue, exactly how it fits. You know, it's a amazing thing to think about what Debbie is talking about. And, you know, one of the loops that we have in our economic system is that if a corporation pollutes, it creates an opportunity to privatize. When in fact we should be thinking about respecting the earth from the beginning. So the problem is not there. So we are fortunate to have with us Teresa Huntsinger, the program director for the Clean and Healthy Rivers program of the Oregon Environmental Council. Teresa convened the Oregon Environmental Council Stormwater Solutions Team. She organizes workshops on low-impact development practices and participates in the state's Integrated Water Resources Strategy Policy Advisory Group. Teresa?
All right, so how many of you were here this afternoon? A few, not too many. Okay, so I'm going to give sort of a piece of the presentation that I gave this afternoon because I have a little bit less time this evening. So for the folks who were here this afternoon, some of this may be repetitive, but I'll try to make it a little bit different. So I'm with the Oregon Environmental Council, and we're a statewide nonprofit organization. Our office is in Portland, but we do work all around the state, and we're the oldest statewide environmental group in Oregon. We celebrated our 40th anniversary last year. And we tend to work at the nexus of the environment and public health. And we do that using 3 different strategies. One is impacting public policy in the state of Oregon. One is working with businesses to use more environmentally friendly practices. And the other is to work with individuals to help you make personal choices that are going to be good for the environment and good for your health. And so the Clean and Healthy Rivers program that I work on is one component of the work that OEC does. And there's more information about our work out on the tables out front. So I am today going to talk about the issue of toxics in our water and in our fish. And these toxics are also in our bodies as well. So you're probably aware that toxics such as mercury are often found in fish. You hear about that when you're eating tuna fish or things like that. And these toxics are also found in the fish that are swimming in our rivers here in Oregon. Mercury, PCBs, many other toxics, they tend to accumulate in the bodies of the fish because they're there swimming in that water, soaking it through their skin, and many of these toxics are very persistent, and they sort of attach to the fats that are in the flesh of the fish, and they work their way up the food chain so that when we eat a fish that's contaminated with those toxics, it can be harmful to our health. So this is a particular issue for people who eat a lot of fish. And that means that it's a particularly important issue for tribal communities for whom the salmon and the lamprey are traditional, cultural, religious foods. They're the first foods. They're part of religious ceremonies. And Native peoples, like, for example, the Confederated Tribes of the Umatilla, they eat much more fish than I probably do. But that's not something that they can just go and change because they're worried about toxics. It's a part of who they are. And so when the state is making decisions and regulating the amount of pollutants and toxics that are allowed to be released into our rivers, they make those decisions based on trying to calculate what is necessary in order to protect human health. And so those decisions are based on their assumptions about how much fish people eat. And so the state had made an assumption that people eat fish maybe like twice a month. That was their estimated fish consumption rate. And that rate was rejected by the Environmental Protection Agency because it didn't protect people. And the tribes have been pushing for at least 10 years now to try to get this issue addressed because the standards that say how much toxics can be released into our rivers, we're not protecting them. So DEQ and the EPA went through this process and they reevaluated the fish consumption rate and came up with a new standard of 175 grams per day, and that is the equivalent of eating about 23 8-ounce servings of fish in a month. And that actually is, it may sound like a lot, but it's actually quite a realistic number. For the Confederated Tribes of the Umatilla on their reservation, they have to develop their own standards for the EPA, and their rate is more than 300 grams a day. So now that DEQ has adopted this higher fish consumption rate, which is basically the assumption about how much fish Oregonians eat, and the idea here being that when they adopt this fish consumption rate, it's not even supposed to be what the average Oregonian rate, because when you are trying to develop water quality standards or even air quality standards, they should be designed to protect our most vulnerable populations. Like if you're developing an air quality standard, you design it to protect people who have asthma, who are more likely to be harmed by air quality impacts. So it's the same thing with the fish consumption rate and the water quality standards. They should be designed to protect our most vulnerable populations, not necessarily the average Oregonian. So now that we have this higher fish consumption rate adopted in Oregon, that means that all the standards for all the toxics that DEQ allows to be released into our rivers are shrunk down by a magnitude, a factor of 10. So implementing that is going to mean that for the wastewater treatment plants that treat everything we flush the toilet and send down the sink, as well as the industrial plants like our pulp and paper mills, they have to meet some very, very high standards now as a result of this newer fish consumption rate. And in fact, they're the highest water quality standards for toxics in the United States. But others will probably coming soon in other states. The state of Washington is now just beginning the process of reviewing their fish consumption rate as required by the EPA. So the Environmental Quality Commission, which is the board that oversees the Department of Environmental Quality, is in the process now of adopting these higher toxic standards. And meanwhile, it's legislative session. So a lot of the industrial groups and the wastewater treatment plants are really scared that it's going to be very expensive for them to meet these tighter standards. And they're even worried about the process of, like, if they can't meet them, there will be all these sort of off-ramps that they can take if they can't meet them, but they're even worried that that process will be expensive. So there is a bill that's being proposed in Salem that would make it easier for them to use those off-ramps and to get variances and to not meet the standards. And it would also delay the implementation of the standards for a couple of years. So we're working to revise that bill so that hopefully we want to get rid of the delayed implementation date. I mean, we would love to see the bill just be killed, for one thing. But if it's not, to just be revised so that the worst parts of it are taken out and modified. So, so I wrote up here the information about the bill. Here we go. So the question that this makes us ask ourselves is, you know, if it is going to be more expensive to treat our water, are we willing to pay that cost in order to protect more vulnerable populations and people who eat more fish? And what if that is more expensive for some of our industries? You know, of course, in this economy, we have people saying, oh, businesses are going to be leaving the state because they can't meet these standards. I don't really think that that's going to happen, but it's something we need to consider, is are we willing to accept that in order to protect public health? So here's the bill. It's called HB 2007. And I wrote up here the names of 2 representatives from Lane County who they just happen to have a seat on the committee that is looking at this bill right now. I don't know what position either of them has on the bill, but since I'm here in Eugene and they may in fact be your representatives, it would be helpful for them to hear from you that you care about environmental justice, that you care about toxics, because they will play a role in deciding what happens with this bill. So it's called HB 2007. It's being heard by the House Transportation and Economic Development Committee. And what we really want to make sure happens with this bill is that it does not delay implementation of stronger toxics water quality standards. So in addition to the toxics that we actually have standards for, there are also a number of other products that have chemicals in them that we use in our daily lives that wastewater treatment plants were not designed to remove, and so they end up in our rivers as well. So these are some of them. They're the nonstick coatings in our pans, they are pharmaceuticals, fragrances, pesticides. Many of these chemicals have been identified as priorities for water quality by the Department of Environmental Quality. And even though there aren't standards for these yet, there are efforts that we can make in terms of pollution prevention to try to keep these out of our rivers and to keep them out of our bodies as well. And so the process of preventing pollution with all of these toxics, it includes everybody. It's choices that we make individually, as well as there's a role that the government can play and should play once we know that these toxics are harmful in removing them from our products. So for example, we have been working this session on passing a ban on bisphenol A, which is also called BPA, which is found in hard plastic water bottles, baby bottles. We're working to ban it from baby bottles, sippy cups, and sports bottles, and then also create a certification program for Oregon food processors who want to use BPA-free lining in their cans because it's also found in canned food. And that bill passed the Senate recently. We're excited about that. And soon it will be up for a vote in the House. And so if you're interested in contacting your legislators about any of those issues, I have a sign-up sheet out front, and you can check the box for the action alert list or our general e-newsletter. So just one of these examples of the sort of emerging contaminants I wanted to tell you about is triclosan. It's toxic to aquatic life. It's the ingredient that's found in antibacterial soaps. It's also found in even some deodorants and even toothpastes. So the nice thing is that it is required to be listed on the ingredient list. So all you have to do is check the ingredient list and avoid products that contain triclosan. And if you would like to find more information about things like that you can do to protect your health and choices that you can make to protect our rivers, we have a program that's called Love Your River. Because, as Stan was mentioning, we think of the Willamette often when we think of polluted rivers, but the fact is that every major river in Oregon is violating water quality standards, and that has to do with our major rivers, and they are very much affected by the tributaries. Like here we have the Long Tom and the Amazon. So we need to take better care of our rivers. And this Love Your River program provides you with information, just one thing each month that we're asking you to do. And if you pledge to take that action, you can also be entered to win fun prizes like outdoor recreation gear that we got donated by local businesses. So I have some nice little stickers and brochures out front, and there's a website called loveyourriver.org and an email list, so you can find out what the monthly challenge is that month. So I encourage you all to check that out and take better care of our rivers. Thank you very much.